Hey, can you hear me?
Hear you.
Yes, ma'am. Great. Oh, good morning. I am so glad to be here. Just as a note, this event is being recorded, and I wanted to introduce myself. I am Ariel Ford. I am the Director for the Division of Child Development and Early Education, and I am the least important person in this room today, so thank you for letting me have a couple of minutes with you. For those of you that I haven't met yet, I am a Buncombe County native. I was born and raised in the western part of the state and came to the field kind of by accident and have been in love with early childhood since I stumbled into my first 2-year-old classroom. So I have a long history of working on behalf of children, families, and teachers, and pre-K is certainly an important and critical role within that context. I also want to take a second to thank our General Assembly for supporting funding for NC Pre-K. I want to thank all of our local Smart Start partnerships who continue to support the quality program of NC Pre-K, and our local government who in various places across the state support NC Pre-K. Also take the time to acknowledge and support all of the local civic clubs and other philanthropic programs that offer support for our NC Pre-K program across the state. So thank you to all of those folks for knowing that NC Pre-K changes the lives of children and families, and they show that acknowledgement through their funding and their support of the work that you do every day. I also want to take a second to acknowledge how hard this year has been. We could never have guessed. I know we say it all the time that these are unprecedented times, but they truly are. We could never have guessed what would have happened, what has happened. I remember thinking that we would have a 2-week shutdown, everything would be fine, and we'd go back to normal, and that obviously is not the case. This has been a year that has tested all of us. It has tested our state systems, our child care systems, and it has called upon each of you to work with integrity and grace and resilience. And those are things that you do on a normal day in a normal classroom and a normal contract year. And this year has asked you to draw on reserves that you did not know you had. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that to your classrooms, to your children, to your teachers. Thank you for that. I wanted to just share with you that I'm committed to NC Pre-K. I believe in what the program does, what it can do, what it will do, what it has done. I'm committed to you as individuals, your professional development and growth. I'm committed to our DCDEE team that supports NC Pre-K every day in Raleigh and beyond. And most certainly and without a doubt, I'm committed to the teachers, to the children, and to the families that trust us to make great decisions for the NC Pre-K program. The children and families and teachers are most certainly my why. They are why I do this work. Throughout my years of being a teacher, a coach, a TA person, a director, etc., I have been in lots and lots and lots of pre-K classrooms, and what I can share with you is that each of those NC pre-K classrooms is a place where children are given the opportunity to grow, develop, and become the human beings that they want and deserve to become. Magic happens in those classrooms, and you make that happen. It happens with a lot of dedication, it happens with resources, it happens with grit, and it happens with a ton of love. So thank you for that. So I don't know that I have a whole lot more to say. I am eternally grateful for this program. I've seen it change lives, as I've said. There's a lot of amazing detailed information that's going to come your way over the next 2 days. I have been astounded by what you have been able to do in communities on behalf of children and families and in partnership with children and families this year. I can't wait for that to be shared with you. I am here with you and for you, and if there's ever anything you need, I am just a phone call or email away. I will, without further ado, pass this on to our amazing leader, Lorena Gonzalez. Thank you for the chance to say a few words this morning.
Thank you, Ariel. Good morning, everybody. we apologize for the delay, but you know, as technology goes, these things sometimes happen. But thank you for your patience this morning. I'm going to just start us off real quick. I noticed a few names in the attendees box. Doing this virtually is a little difficult sometimes because I'm used to seeing faces. I noticed some new names. So for those of you that are new, welcome. My name is, and everybody welcome, my name is Lorena Gonzalez. For those that are not familiar with me, I am the Senior Manager of the Early Education Branch of DCDEE, and I oversee 3 units, NC Pre-K, EES, which provides teacher licensure support for NC Pre-K and workforce education. So we'll just move right along here. I'm just going to share with you a few things. This is an abbreviated agenda, I guess, for today. You should have all received the actual agenda for today and tomorrow's presentations in a PDF. There may be some slight changes, so you should be able to still kind of keep along. I'm just going to share the layout, instructions. There's a quick summary of the presentations that we'll be providing to you today. And then we'll wrap up with Q&A and next steps. This is an abbreviated agenda for tomorrow. Tomorrow, you will be hearing from Early Educator Support, which is teacher licensure for NC Pre-K, as I had mentioned. You'll also be hearing from our budget and contracts team tomorrow. And again, you should have received the agenda for that as well in the same email in a PDF. So really quick, same rules as always, but you know they're always good to share. Before I lay into these, I do want to share, because I don't have it up here on this slide, I always forget, but it's the most important because everybody always asks. And yes, you will receive this presentation at the end. We will be sending it out as we always do in a PDF, so don't worry about that. We hope to send it out, if not by this afternoon for today's presentations, then definitely by the end of tomorrow when all presentations are complete. So just an FYI, as you can already tell, only presenters are able to speak. All participants have been muted, and that's just kind of to help us keep on time and keep with the flow of the presentation. If you have any questions, please submit them to the Q&A box, and that should be on your lower right-hand side. Questions will be monitored and addressed at the end. We have staff that are manning those questions and reviewing them as they come in, so feel free to send them in as we're presenting. You don't have to wait until the end. We will also supply you with the Q&A document that will be distributed to you, again in a PDF, and also posted on our website. The Q&A document does take a little bit of time. It won't be available immediately after the presentations because we do have to review them and, clean them up a little bit, make them presentable, and then share them with you. I can promise you this, that we will send it to you in a PDF. Even if we can't get it uploaded right away, at least you have something on hand. And just a reminder, as Ariel had mentioned at the beginning, this meeting is being recorded. And we do have staff available for any IT issues that you may encounter. You can just go ahead and I guess share what that is in the chat, and our IT, Tammy Freeman, will be able to assist. Overall, we always share a purpose of these meetings, and usually it's a few bullet items, but considering everything that's been going on and looking at the changes that we're trying to make as we continue to improve the NC Pre-K program, we just wanted to share that this meeting specifically is just to share information that we believe is current for contracting agencies in regards to the remainder of the year. This is our winter regional meeting, so we wanted to make sure that we shared information that was relevant to this time period, or time frame, excuse me, in the school year. And as you know, we'll be preparing for our summer regionals, and we'll be sharing information related to that time of year. So hopefully the information we share is useful. For those of you who are new, please don't get scared by what you may hear or what we're sharing. We still plan on holding a new contractor orientation or training, So we'll be sharing that information with you as it's developed. And without further ado, I will turn this over to Dr. Christy Snuggs, our Deputy Director for DCDEE. Christy, hold on, I don't see your name. Oh, there you are.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Christy Snuggs. I am very privileged to be able to have a few moments to speak to you this morning. I just have to say that it's exciting that we're finally able to get back together and have a conversation. I, too, want to echo the opening remarks from Ariel as well as Lorena, and thank you both and all of you who are out there listening this morning for all of the tremendous work that you have done this year. The children and the families of North Carolina, thank you. I have received so many messages from families that are just so excited about the work that is going on in NC Pre-K, especially this year. We had the privilege just this last couple of weeks of gathering stories from many of you about the wonderful things that are happening in our NC Pre-K program, even though the world around us is a little chaotic at the moment. And we are so thrilled that there have been good things going on, and we know that your teachers and the administrators and all of you at the contracting agencies have gone above and beyond to make this year successful. And we are so thankful for the work that you've done. So what I wanted to do this morning is just to spend a few moments. I'm going to briefly touch on just some of the high-level statistics. You're going to get much more as the two-day training and our meeting goes on. But I just wanted to share with you just some highlights and some successes that is so great about our NC Pre-K program, but especially this year, and to celebrate these with you for the work, because without you, these successes would not have been possible. So just to talk, and I apologize, it looks like when we were transferring slides, they got a little crowded, so I apologize for that. But you will remember that way back in August, it feels like it's been a long time ago, August 3rd, we issued some operating guidance. And I know that guidance came out late from the standpoint of you only had a few weeks to turn things around and get things ready. But, you know, we were all struggling with how the schools were going to respond and how we were going to respond. But I will tell you, even though that information came out, you took it and you ran with it and you made things happen. And again, thank you for that work. Basically, what we said is that we recommended in-person classrooms for NC Pre-K as much as possible. And if families wanted it, that you provide them with an option of either a hybrid or remote learning. We did ask that private childcare that were already operating, because our childcare facilities remained open throughout the COVID pandemic, that they provide face-to-face instruction in those areas. And we also made sure that you wanted to ensure that you followed the Child Care Strong NC Public Health Toolkit, which has evolved as the pandemic itself has evolved. But you have done a phenomenal job with making sure that children have been kept safe during this year. We also tried to provide some resources by making sure that we looked at what it really takes to run an NC pre-K program, and we realized that whether you have 4 or 5 children in the classroom or you have a classroom of 18, you still have to have teachers. You still have to have the space. You have to have all of these necessities in order to run it. So we really looked at our funding, and we wanted to do more of a classroom model this year, that we were going to pay you based on those allocated slots. So we hope that that was helpful. We know that was that there's always questions that arise when changes are made, and we know that people have worked through most of those. But hopefully you've been able to have the resources, financial resources you needed to operate the program. But because there were so many of our classrooms, many in the public schools, based on whatever the superintendent or the local school system had decided to do, that had to provide online resources. So we worked with our PDG dollars, and we were able to repurpose some of those dollars to provide a statewide online solution that allowed folks to have a curriculum, to have resources for our teachers. Trainings were provided in a very short period of time, and also family engagement resources, ways that we could engage our families. And you see some of those numbers there, that early on we had over 4,000 teachers and assistants and administrators trained. And in family engagement and remote learning trainings, we had over 3,200 teachers, assistants, and administrators. So I wanted to share all of that because, like I said, the guidance went out on August 3rd, and by the end of August, or the first weekend or so in September, we had the majority of our classrooms up and running. Tremendous kudos to the work of our administrators, our contract administrators, and all of our sites for the phenomenal job that you have done. And also for just being able to pull together. Our state level staff had to help teaching strategies to pull these trainings together so that we could get teachers in the classroom. So I just want to highlight the amazing work that went on to begin the school year. All right. In additional, these are just the way we set up our learning requirements. And I want to just briefly touch on these because then I want to highlight some of the successes with these. I already mentioned that our teachers were asked to do amazing things. Many of them had to not only provide face-to-face instruction, but if they were in a hybrid environment, they also had to lead remote moments for those learners that were online. They had to do extra check-ins with families, and also at-home lesson plans. Teachers had to provide daily and weekly learning and educational activities and learning games, not only for those face-to-face in the classroom, but also for those that were learning online. So with all of that being said, it's amazing that we are where we are. My data, the most recent data I've looked at, is that we have seen an increase in the number of children up until December. Many of our programs that started out may be fully remote. Many of those school systems were able to bring the youngest children back face-to-face because we know that with very young children, the best way for them to learn is in an environment that is face-to-face and not through remote learning. And so we thank you for the adjustments you made and how you were able to bring them back. We saw between a 7 and 10% growth from the beginning of the school year until the middle of the school year, till the end of December. Now, we know that with the holidays and people being together, we have seen somewhat of a transition back to some of our online or remote learning. But, you know, with the governor's announcement yesterday that hopefully schools are going to be back in session soon, and hopefully the youngest children are the ones that we're encouraging, we're going to see more of those classrooms being face-to-face and more availability for our families who have to go back to work. But one of the things that I do want to highlight is on the slide in front of you, and that is that throughout this pandemic, even back last year when we had to make reservations and alterations at the end of the school year. And we were able to really do a teacher survey and talk with teachers. One of the things that we've heard over and over and over again is that they felt like they had a better connection with families. And this year, the data proves that. I've highlighted here in red that we know that 93% of the families that are in our NCPK programs are engaging with teachers at least once or more a week. And these engagements are substantial engagements. They're engagements where they're talking about the development of their children, where they're talking about the learning that is going on. And if I can't share anything else, this is a tremendous success that we've had this year with this program. I think that this is something that we can learn from and really build upon to make our program even stronger. But I, again, applaud the efforts that our teachers have made, and please share with them the great efforts that you as contract administrators have made to make sure that the teachers have the resources they need, but also the teachers for really engaging families and families being involved in their children's learning. The other thing that I want to highlight is that we have somewhere between 60 to 70% enrollment in our programs, and that is really phenomenal. I mentioned earlier that our child care facilities have remained open, and they're just now getting to those levels of enrollment, but our NCPK classrooms are somewhere between 68 and 70% enrolled from the standpoint of total statewide numbers. I realize there's some variations within each of our communities. But I just wanted to take a few moments to highlight those successes, to talk to you about those, and to share that even though we've had tremendous successes, we've done this in an environment that has created many challenges. We know that recruitment and enrollment has been low, and that you've had to cancel many of your outreach activities due to pandemic protocols. We do understand that public schools have reached, in many cases, to remote or hybrid learning options, and families have had to find alternative solutions, and as a result, our numbers or our classrooms have not been full. We know that teachers have had to adjust to new training platforms in a very short period of time. We know you as contract administrators have had to adjust the way we make payments and how things are distributed, and we appreciate that. And then we had to do that while we were also experiencing exposure to COVID and having to shut down classes here and there. But through all of those challenges, we have succeeded, and we have done an amazing amount of work. And so I went real quickly, sorry about that, but we are planning to do evaluation of this year. We're going to build on the teacher survey data from the spring, and we're really going to use this information. There is work in our evaluation plan to really see how COVID has impacted the program and any examination of any learning loss mitigation practices that you guys have done and teachers have done, any training, any contact patterns, ways that we can do things better, looking at attendance, openings and closures of our facilities. But again, we're going to be doing more of that research, but I wanted to share the success and let you know how much we appreciated all the work you have done this year. So I am now going to turn this back over to Janessa. Is it you?
Yes, ma'am.
All righty.
Actually, Christy, if you could send it to Jennifer.
Jennifer, I can do that. But thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for the time that I have here. And I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer.
Thank you, Christy. Good morning, everyone. I wanted to talk just a few minutes about some of the program stats that we have for our 2021 school year. This year, we know so far that statewide, there are currently 1,193 NCPK sites and 2,071 classrooms. As you can see from the pie graph below, that we have 51% of our classrooms in public schools. We have 15% of our classrooms in Head Start sites, and we have 34% of our NCPK classrooms in public, non-public classrooms. When we break down this data just a little bit more, we want to look that statewide there are currently 29,896 allocated slots and 20,546 enrolled children, which equals a 69% enrollment rate. And that is based on our December 2020 attendance data and also our kids data as of January 2021. Now, when we look at the enrollment of children per site, we see that 64% are enrolled at a Head Start programs. We have 64% that are enrolled in private, non-public sites, and we also have 74% enrolled in public sites in our public schools. And diving just a little bit deeper, we want to look at the enrollment percentages by region. And this is based off our 2020 attendance data. And if you note also that this information is done by geographic regions, not necessarily by your program policy consultant region, but we wanted to look at allocated slots and enrolled children and break it down geographically. And when we look at this, we see that 74% of the enrollment is happening in the West, and 66% is happening in the central area, 71% in the Northeast, and 67% in the Southeast. So it's pretty balanced across the state. And so all these statistics kind of help us see the big picture of what's going on with the NCPK sites for this school year. For a little bit more information, I'm going to pass it now to Fran, and Fran's going to tell you a little bit more statistics.
Good morning. Thank you, Jennifer. So the next 4 slides show statistics regarding the mode of instruction across the state and the various site types. And with this information, so keep in mind that this data was pulled from the January bi-weekly report that you all have been completing diligently for us. And if this information is pulled today, it may look slightly different. So looking at this chart, you can see that across the state, there's a fairly even split between the 3 modes of instruction: hybrid, in-person, and fully remote. So hybrid is slightly higher than remote and in-person. Now looking at this slide, you see Head Start only. So just in Head Start, you also see that they have a fairly even split between classrooms across the state providing hybrid instruction and fully remote instruction, with only 13% providing traditional and in-person. Here you see private, non-public classrooms. 698 classrooms across the state are private and non-public. Out of the 3 site types, they do have the in-person instruction happening. As you can see, 56% of their classrooms being traditional and in-person, with hybrid being 35%, and then a small percentage at 7% being fully remote. And finally, the public schools being the last instruction or site type that we're looking at. With regard to classroom fees today, there's again a fairly even split, similar to Head Start, with hybrid and fully remote. Fully remote being slightly higher than hybrid, and the in-person being at 21% below activation option. So I'm going to pass it to you.
Thank you, Fran. So good morning. My name is Janessa Nieves. I'm the NC Pre-K Program Manager. And I wanted to just take a few minutes to really mostly give you reminders. I'm not sharing a lot of new information, but I did want to take a chance to just talk with you guys about the direct service funds for this year, the payment process, and sort of some ongoing work that we are doing behind the scenes to try to support you all as we close out the year. So let's see. So just as a reminder, and Christy referenced this as well, but we did change our payment process for this year. Again, it's as with most of what we've done this year, it's in response to COVID, and it's in an attempt to support the program and really stabilize services for children. So we did move to this classroom flat rate model, and we based the rates in a very simple formula of the assigned teacher rate, so what that teacher is eligible for, the per child rate, multiplied by however many slots were allocated, and that is what generated that classroom rate that the classroom would receive all year long, regardless of child enrollment, so long as their teacher was still in place. We also set up a process for requesting changes to those rates. So we know that things fluctuate throughout the year. You have teachers who leave and come on. You have teachers who advance their education and receive their license, which can affect their rate. You also may have circumstances where you have realized that you need to allocate fewer slots over here and more over there. So we do have this process to request changes to the classroom rates. There is a change request form that you can complete. And I will say that we have received a lot. And it has been a very cumbersome process in some cases, and I know that the turnaround time for those changes has not always been swift. But I do, want to just kind of reassure everyone that as we receive them, we are actively working on them to ensure that the changes that we make are accurate and that there are no kind of unintended changes that happen. So it does sometimes take a while to complete them, but it is because we're trying to be as accurate as possible. So just as a reminder, again, some of the reasons that you may need to submit a change form. If you have had any changes to the assigned teacher, meaning someone was in place and they have now left, or their status has changed, they have gone from a long-term sub and they've now been assigned as the lead teacher, those are situations where we would need for you to communicate with your policy consultant and potentially submit a change form. Also, if the rate for that assigned teacher changed, again, it could be because that teacher received a license and is now qualified for a higher reimbursement, or it may be because you have hired a different teacher and it's changed the rate. And then again, the number of allocated slots, if you have a change to that, you would submit the form as well. Your program policy consultants are going to be your first kind of line of information in these situations. So again, contact them if you need some guidance about whether or not you need to submit a form, and they'll be happy to help. Now, one of the things that I think is really great that has come out of this whole process is that it has really allowed our team to have a better understanding of the service information and the spending trends within each county. Because we are now so actively involved in helping to assign rates, assess for changes, we're able to kind of track your budgets a little better. It's giving us an opportunity to provide more individualized support and to make sure that we are helping everyone to close out the year as successfully as they can. So one of the things that we are working on right now as we kind of approach, mid to late year, we're reviewing everyone's committed budget information in NC Pre-K Plan to try to identify the contracting agencies that we need to provide some follow-up for. So some of the examples of circumstances that would kind of flag an agency for follow-up, if we have, let's say we have a county that has classrooms that have been allocated slots, but there's still not a rate in place. It may be because it's pending a teacher approval. It may be because the teacher left and you couldn't find someone. That would be a situation where we'll do a follow-up and just kind of get an idea of what's going on there. If there are classrooms that we can see have experienced a teacher change, but we haven't received a rate change form for that, that would, flag for follow-up. And then we're also looking really closely at the kind of projected spending for each county. So looking at the direct service allocation for the county and comparing that to the planned budget, the committed budget that's in there, to see, is there a large amount of funding that appears to be unallocated that we're not sure how that county will be spending down. So those are things we're going to be following up with you. Your policy consultant will be reaching out over the coming weeks. If you have questions ahead of time, of course, you can reach out to them. But I just wanted you to be aware of that. A couple other things that I want to go ahead and note here, kind of separate from the slide. We will also be doing some targeted follow-up with you all related to enrollment. And so one of the things that, again, in an effort to try to provide support, set things up maybe for next year to see where we can influence, we will be following up with counties where we've noticed that there's a pretty large dip in enrollment, particularly counties that the enrollment kind of falls below that state average, just to follow up to kind of get a better idea of what's been happening locally, what impacts have you all experienced, to try to figure out how we might be able to support as we move into next year. I know a lot of you are gearing up or may even be in the middle of your recruitment period. So this is something that we want to try to offer to provide additional support. So just a side note there. And then the last thing I wanted to do is just remind everyone, for this year, again, because we were trying to offer multiple ways to support our programs and support contracting agencies, we did put in something, the COVID-19 flexible use of funds. So this is where we allowed for contracting agencies to request to use a portion of their direct service funds for purchasing items that kind of fall under these allowable categories that you see on the screen there. Now, I will say in some cases, we have counties that have allocated all of their funds. They don't have anything additional to request. But we do have a fair amount of contractors that it appears that there are funds in that line that haven't been allocated out. So I just wanted to remind you all that this is an option. If it's something that your county could use, your programs could benefit from, I just want to remind you that you have that option. A couple reminders about that. The request may not exceed 2% of your contract allocation amount. So that's something to be aware of. And it does have to be approved by your local committee prior to submitting it to DCDEE for approval. So it is something that your committee will have to review and sign off on. If you reference the COVID-19 reopening policies, which can be found on our website, but it can also be found, it's been emailed out to you all. The last update was early December. You'll find the full process for how you can request to use those funds and the steps you need to go through. And as usual, I encourage you, reach out to your program policy consultant if this is something that you want to pursue or have questions about. And they're also available to help kind of do a proof of your proposal, just to make sure that your request meets some of the parameters that we've outlined, which will speed the process along once it gets to the state office for review. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to pass this over to Sharon Stutes, one of our program policy consultants, and she's going to share some information with you guys about site monitoring.
Thanks, Janessa. Again, I am Sharon Stutes, NC Pre-K Program Policy Consultant, and I cover the central part of the state. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the 2021 NC Pre-K Site Monitoring process. The 2021 Site Monitoring Tool is available and posted on DCDEE's website under the NC Pre-K tab. The Site Monitoring Tool was revised to reflect policy changes and flexibilities implemented in response to COVID-19. Same as the previous site monitoring processes, site administrators or the designees must complete the Site Monitoring Tool, and the tool was due by January 31st. And one of the flexibilities implemented this year is that the Site Monitoring Tool may be submitted electronically, and electronic signatures are acceptable. Revisions to the Site Monitoring Tool include questions specific to the mode of instruction being implemented in the NC Pre-K classroom at each site. When completing the Site Monitoring Tool, site administrators must complete each section based on the information for each applicable classroom. So it's possible a site may submit a Site Monitoring Tool which includes information for face-to-face, traditional classrooms, hybrid, and full remote classrooms, if the site has classrooms operating under each of those modes of instruction. I would also like to point out that there are some questions on the tool that are applicable to all classroom sites, regardless of the mode of instruction. So it's important that the Site Monitoring Tool is read carefully. Now, there have been instances in which the mode of instruction has changed during the school year for various reasons. Site administrators should complete the tool based on the mode of instruction at the time of submission. And just a quick reminder, a Site Monitoring Tool is not needed for each classroom. One Site Monitoring Tool will be submitted per site, whether the site has one classroom or 6 classrooms. And a word of caution to those who like to provide a lot of details on the Site Monitoring Tool, although the Site Monitoring Tool is fillable, the more information that's typed in the boxes, the smaller the font becomes. A Site Monitoring Tool is required for all NC Pre-K classrooms, even for those sites with no NC Pre-K children enrolled. For those classrooms, the site administrator should complete the Site Monitoring Tool and indicate any question that cannot be answered. And for any response, or any NA response, the site administrator will need to provide an explanation in the plan clarification column. Once the site submits the Site Monitoring Tool by January 31st, contracting agency staff will need to validate the information by March 31st. We encourage on-site monitoring visits if it's safe to do so. However, validation may be completed as an on-site visit or virtual desktop review. Because monitoring will vary across the state depending on the operational status of sites and classrooms, we did not provide step-by-step guidance for conducting virtual desktop reviews. We trust contracting agencies will use their best judgment in validating information on the Site Monitoring Tool. As required by DCDEE monitoring process, contracting agency staff must complete the local contractor validation statement, sign, and date the tool. As I mentioned earlier, classrooms may have changed the mode of instruction for various reasons during the school year. If the mode of instruction changes after the Site Monitoring Tool has been submitted to the contracting agency staff will validate the information based on the mode of instruction at the time the Site Monitoring Tool was submitted. For example, if the classroom was fully remote when the Site Monitoring Tool was submitted, but is now hybrid or traditional face-to-face instruction, contracting agency staff will validate the tool based on the full remote mode of instruction. However, it is the contracting agency decision to choose to require additional documentation if the mode of instruction changes. Again, we trust contracting agency staff will use their best judgment in validating the information. And for additional guidance on the 2021 site monitoring process, the site monitoring tool, or validating the site monitoring tool, please reach out to your NC Pre-K policy consultant. And now I will turn it over to Lorena and Patricia. Okay, Lorena. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. So actually, Patricia McCarter is going to go first. Pat?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Patricia McCarter, and I'm the NC Pre-K Program Coordinator. I'm just going to give you some information about updating the listserv. And so in regards to updating the listserv, contractors need to go in and make sure they update information and plan. Once you update information and plan, I ask that you email me, also CC your NC Pre-K Program Consultant, Policy Consultant, so they're aware of it as well. I will go into the NC Pre-K plan to make sure the information is updated. And once I can confirm that the information is updated, I will send an email to our IT support. And once IT support update the listserv, they will respond back to the email to all parties involved. So that will be me, the policy consultant, you, and whoever was added. So if we can go to the next slide, Lorena, thank you. All right, so basically it's very important that I have this information in order for me to be able to move forward to update the information. And so I basically created showing you an email template. There is a form that's in the process of being created. Once that's finalized, I definitely will be sharing that with you guys. But everything that's on this slide is basically what's on that form. And so here you see, if you want to remove someone, of course I need to know what date and what county. Believe it or not, sometimes I get emails without a signature stamp that say what county they're from. So it's important that I know the county. It's important, sometimes I get the first name and not the last name. I need that information. So please make sure you include first name and last name, the work email, and then what position. So if it's going to be the contract administrative, physical, or program contact, additional contact, make sure that I know those things. And then again, it's important too to know whether they need access to our NC Pre-K data system. So you want to make sure that if they leave it and they're no longer with you guys, you want to deactivate them. Or if they, joining your team and they need access to these things, I need to know if you need to add them. I know some of you can do that yourself, but just in case that's support that I need to do, then just let me know. And that is it. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Pat. Okay, so this is Lorena. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our communication plan, and we seem to be moving along quicker than I expected in our agenda. So I'd like to think that we're really that good, but considering the changes we had and then the addition of some more information, I'm pretty impressed with our team today. So that might give you some time back at the end, so let me just kind of keep moving. It was brought to our attention that there were some concerns about communication in general, how we respond, when we respond, what we're sharing, what we're not sharing, timeliness, all that fun stuff that entails communication. And so we were tasked with coming up with a plan that would be beneficial to not only our team, but to our external team, which is you guys, the NC Pre-K contracting agency staff, and then hopefully that trickles down to your local stakeholders, teachers, and the site administrators, and so on and so forth. So what I'm going to be sharing with you in these next few slides is an attempt to address those concerns in a form of a plan that we're hoping to implement in the coming months. So this is more so information. We're still kind of cleaning it up, having discussions, ironing it out, seeing what works or what will or won't work or what have you. So please just kind of bear that in mind. It's not something that's going to happen like right away. We still have to discuss as a team, and we'll keep sharing, and you'll see as the slides go on kind of what everybody's role is. So like I said, overall, this is just the goal here is to provide that additional streamlined support in response to any requests, inquiries, comments, questions, concerns that you have throughout the year based on the information that comes out of our office. So one thing we wanted to implement in our communication plan is what we're calling, I'll start with the cafes. This is to help us, these two ideas are to help us increase sharing information with you. We're looking at having cafes on you'll see the last bullet there, it says monthly or bi-monthly, and that's still kind of in discussion, and you're going to get to have feedback on that at a later date when we gather information from you. So we're looking at having it either way on a steady time frame throughout the year, whether it is, monthly, bi-monthly, maybe, weekly, bi-weekly. We're looking at implementing this. The whole purpose of the cafes is to share and gather information. So we want to be able to get you together and be able to share information with you, maybe a repeat of what we already shared, either through a previous webinar or through previous guidance that has been sent out in email or whatever other format. And we want to allow that space also to be for you to share ideas, or for both teams to share creative ideas. Like I said, this is still evolving, so it could pretty much be anything that we need or want it to be that'll fit both of our needs. But what we wanted to do, the ultimate purpose, is to create a space after we share information that'll help us clarify and discuss that information. A lot of times what happens is, after a webinar such as this one, or let's go back a few months, especially during COVID, when we were sharing not only written guidance via email, we were presenting information via webinars, and there was still a lot of questions at the end. And although we did our best to answer those questions in the form of a Q&A, there was still a lot of information that was kind of unclear to a lot of people, and that happens when you're sharing a lot, so we completely understand that. Our hope is that the cafes will then allow us to clarify information and have that like follow-up discussion. We're hoping that, I know I mentioned like a schedule there, but we also want to use the cafes, we want them to connect or align, so to speak, to the webinars that we share. So for example, if we already have the cafes implemented, then what would happen after this webinar, not immediately after, because it's a long time to be online virtually anyway, but we would have a scheduled cafe already in place for those that want to participate and have discussions and maybe ask any clarifying questions. So that's kind of the goal with that. Again, we'll ask for feedback, and we're hoping that that's just one way of sharing information with you. The other part to this, to increase our sharing, was we came up with the idea of surveys, and please don't confuse this with all the other surveys that you get. I know when I started here and I heard the word surveys for everything, I was like, well, that's a lot, or what does that mean? Because sometimes we use surveys, the word survey, for, I guess, so bear with me. But what we're looking at here when we mention surveys is, let's look at it two ways here. We want to start with an initial survey to help gather information from you in order for us to make this communication plan successful, in order to ensure that the methods that we're trying to implement here are going to work for you. So in order to do that, I mean, we can sit around and meet and guess all day, but we really need to know from you, is this going to work? If we develop and implement this, is this helpful to you? Because the last thing we want to do is to think we have a great idea, spend all this time meeting and developing it, and then implement it, and it's not really working, or it's not something that you as one of our important stakeholders needs or wants, or, you know, has the time for. Everybody has a lot of things on their plate and, you know, busy schedules. We understand that, and we want to be considerate of that as well. So the first survey we will be sharing with you is to gather some preliminary information just to kind of help guide us on our plans for a better communication. So be looking out for that in the coming weeks. We also want to share, moving forward, the second part to this is surveys are always going to be a part of the work that we do. But what we hope to do as we continue to increase our communication and develop better methods of communication is that we want to continue to send out brief surveys, nothing long and extensive, but just to kind of continue to get your feedback throughout the year. I think for those of you that have been here as long since I started here almost 3 years ago, I've always claimed, and I still claim, and I will always claim, that I don't know everything and I don't have all the ideas. And I think that's true for most people, just not everybody will admit it. So I say that to say that you guys may have ideas that'll be helpful. You guys also may have topics that you think we need to discuss that may not even be on our radar. We may not even know that a certain topic is a concern or is unclear or whatever. But if we send out a survey and say, hey, what are some topics that you guys want us to consider or discuss, that'll be helpful to us. We can look at those topics, we can look at the information you shared, and we can, the plan would be to have cafes revolving those topics in addition to, other cafes for, follow-ups to webinars and all that fun stuff. There's things that go on throughout the year where where you may feel we need to gather and expand on. So we want to make sure that we include that. That way it works for you as well. So we hope that when we share that first initial survey, gathering information, you're able to share things. That'll also help us develop I'm going to call it a cafe calendar only because I just thought of it right now, and that's the first thing that came to mind. But it'll help us develop maybe a calendar that we can, moving forward, distribute throughout the year. So let's look at the following school year, 21-22. So hopefully the plan is at the beginning of that year, we'll at least have some type of calendar of discussions that we can share with you, hopefully at the summer regionals, and say, hey, these are the items that we'll be talking about throughout the year that align with what's going on throughout the year. And I'm not talking just NC Pre-K program stuff, like site monitoring and enrollment and all that fun stuff. We're thinking bigger picture here. I want you to remember that we're the programs team, but we don't work without the budget team and the contracts team. So that includes topics and subjects related to them as well. And they've already been part of our initial conversation about this. So, they're included. So in other words, no topic related to NC Pre-K is off limits. And I know the examples I shared are pretty standard, I guess, when it comes to NC Pre-K, but I think it's also helpful to use this opportunity to share ideas that maybe aren't so textbook or manual, meaning you may want to share and discuss things that aren't specifically written somewhere. You may want to talk about, how to deal with certain things in your county or your issues or concerns that you may be having locally that you want to discuss in a group that may be helpful to other contracting agencies in another county that may be having the same issues, but they don't know it. Now, I will say that a lot of you do a really good job of networking. A lot of you already have like your own little, your own little close network of people that you communicate with, but we're hoping that this will help broaden that network and broaden your connections, especially as new staff come along. I mean, we face turnover in the office. You guys face turnover locally. I think this will especially be helpful to any of your new staff that are, getting familiar with NC Pre-K, especially those that have no experience. A lot of times we get emails from them asking us questions, and that's fine. That happens with a lot of new staff, but hopefully the surveys and the cafes will also help decrease that level of individual email, and because we would have created a space where they know, hey, you know what, I can discuss that at the cafe, whether monthly, biweekly, whatever we decide. So I feel like I said a lot about cafes and surveys. We're really excited about this, so we'll share more information as it comes. If you have any questions before I move on to the rest of our communication plan, by all means, please, plug it into the Q&A and we'll do our best to answer those. I do want to say, I almost forgot, we're looking at the cafes being managed by, the NC Pre-K program policy consultants. And you should know who your local NC Pre-K consultant is. And so we're looking at having them be responsible for the cafes. Not to say that Janessa, myself, or the budget or contracts team wouldn't participate, but they're your point of contact. They're the person you work with closely locally. So we want to make sure that you all are the most aligned. If it's budget related, contracts related, or requires myself or Janessa or even Christy or Ariel, then we'll make sure that when we schedule that topic to be discussed, that the people that are responsible for providing answers or being able to facilitate that discussion will be included. That way we're not wasting anybody's time and this becomes meaningful instead of useless, because that's not what we want. However, if y'all feel as a group later that, hey, we don't want to do this, then by all means let us know and we'll try to come up with something else, or maybe you have a better idea, and we're definitely open to that. Okay, so our next plan, or part of this communication plan, is to help us decrease confusion. I think you heard me say a little while ago that we get a lot of email, and that's true, and I'll touch on that a little more. But a lot of times after webinars or after we send out guidance or any type of mass email with a lot of information, there's still questions, and we understand that that's going to happen. What we want to start implementing is what we're calling a one point of contact. And that one point of contact would be Patricia McCarter, who's our NC Pre-K program coordinator. She just presented prior to me. And what we're looking at doing is creating a special email specific for this purpose. So, for example, a lot of you email all of us at our personal emails. What we're trying to do, and I'm going to use this webinar as an example, say we were at a point where we were set up to implement the one point of contact. Say after this webinar, between today and tomorrow, everything ended and we answered questions, but you still had questions or concerns, or you needed clarity and you needed to talk to somebody. Sometimes what happens is you might email the right person or you might not. And that, when you email the wrong person, your email has a tendency to get bounced around. And I don't mean to say that negatively, but That's the best word I can come up with. And that's what happens. And we don't want that to happen. You don't want that to happen. Because then it also wastes time and it increases the time that we'll be able to get back to you with a response. What we're hoping to implement moving forward is that after a webinar or after we share some type of mass information, if you have a question or comment, concern, or request, you would email that special, you would in essence be emailing Patricia, but she will be the one that has access to that designated email that we're going to create here in the office, and we'll share with you once we have that email created. And then she will read your question, your email, whatever it is, and she will then forward it to the appropriate person. That way we know that it is going to the person or group of people that can answer that question. We have promised, in order to help Patricia internally, we are committed to creating what we're calling a referral sheet for Patricia. So, for example, again, after every webinar or after every mass email that goes out, like the information, the guidance and information we shared during COVID, we would share a reference sheet with Patricia to say, hey, if you get questions about XYZ topic, this is who you send that email to, and so on and so forth. So if it's programs related, she knows who to send it to in programs. If it's contracts related, she knows who to send it to in contracts. It may just be Candace Bailey, or it may be Candace and her whole team, Celeste and Courtney. If it's related to budget, she'll know to send it to one specific person in budget or all of the people in budget. So again, it may just be Sonia Beatty, or it may be her whole team, Siobhan and Miladies, and most of you know these names, and they'll be presenting tomorrow. So that's our goal here. Sorry, Tracy, could you mute, please? Tracy? Tammy, I don't know if you can hear me. Can you mute Trace? I think it's Tracy.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm getting some feedback. I think it's Tracy. Can you mute her, please?
I sure will try. Hang on.
Sorry, y'all.
No, it's not letting me. Let me get up with her. Hang on. Sorry about that.
It's okay. Thank you. Sorry, y'all. Lost my train of thought. And so that's pretty much it for point of contact. If you have any questions about that, please put it in the chat box or the Q&A, excuse me, and we'll be sharing more information like that special email, that special designated email that we're going to be created for Patricia. We'll be sharing that as well. Now, I don't want you to think that this is going to take away from you emailing one of us directly, because if you know where the contact person for a specific item, a lot of you have been doing NC Pre-K for a while, you've been in your role, you know who the players are, then by all means, you can still email that person. But if you're unsure, then we definitely want to utilize the I'm sorry, y'all. Hold on a second. I'm still getting a lot of feedback. Okay, sorry, y'all.
Hello?
Okay. So communication, when, like I said at the beginning, communication it goes two ways. And so I wanted to share what, aside from what I already shared about the cafes and the surveys and the one point of contact, there's our part. There's more to our part that we're willing to do, and I just wanted to share that with you. So number one, we do want to offer, we're committed to offering a quick response to email by acknowledging receipt. I myself have done this, and I know other staff do it, and it's usually to just let you know, hey, I received your email. If that happens, it's usually because, one, we may be in the middle of something and can't give you the response that you deserve, or two, we may not have the answer and need to engage one of our colleagues. But regardless of that, we want to at least acknowledge receipt of the email so you know we got it and you know that it's been received and we'll be responding. Two, we want to include a time frame. I put when possible because it's not always possible, and that's just the truth. But we do want to be clear. We want to be able to give you a time frame, like how long. And this is going to be an estimation only. You know, we may say, hey, you know, can you give me like a day or by the end of the day or by the end of the week to get a response to you? And if that happens, great. If that can't happen for whatever reason, then we'll respond back to say, hey, haven't forgot about you, still working on that, and then follow up with maybe another time frame. A lot of the time frame will depend on, again, availability of other team members that we need to help answer your question or to clarify something for you or a request you may have. You know, believe it or not, sometimes, you know, I get a lot of requests. I'm not the end all be all. A lot of times I have to take a lot of things to Christy, and sometimes Christy and Ariel. And a lot of it depends on everybody's schedule. So that kind of leads us into being transparent, and that's why I'm sharing that with you, because a lot of times that is what happens. For me, transparency goes hand in hand with the time frame, because in order to share a specific time frame, we have to be able to be transparent. So, for example, say I need to talk to Sonia in budget, and maybe she's not available. Maybe she's in a webinar herself or at a conference or in an all-day meeting, or maybe she's out and I just didn't know it, but, you know, I find out, okay, well, she'll be out for 2 days, or maybe she's on vacation. I don't know. That's going to impact the time frame that I share with you. Now, just because Sonia's out doesn't mean I can't try to get the answer somewhere else. I will still try. I will go to Sonia's team. I will go to Christy, but again, that also, we have to remember that involves their availability as well. Now, if we get down to it and I've exhausted all possibilities, and I'm using me as an example, but this could be any staff, if we do have to wait for Sonia to be sure, then that's going to delay our response to you. And the best that we can do is say, hey, you know, I won't be able to get a response to you until, I don't know, Tuesday. That's when Sonia returns. And then we'll follow up with Sonia when she returns and make sure you get a response. So that's us trying to be as transparent as possible. There will be things we can't, you know, I'm not saying we're going to go into detail and say, oh, you know, so-and-so is out because of X, Y, Z. We'll just probably say that so-and-so is unavailable for whatever reason, whether it be personal or professional or what have you, but the fact would remain that they would be unavailable. I will say this, and a lot of our staff, whether they are unavailable, meaning they are off work and really not supposed to be available, a lot of times our staff do respond to certain emails because they know it's important and they know it's time sensitive. And I'm sharing that with you, again, to be transparent and to let you know that even though they're on vacation and don't have to respond, sometimes they do. There's quite a few of us on this team across all of our teams here at DCDEE that do that. So if and when that happens, then, we'll, of course, share information. And that's actually at a benefit to you, because if they responded before the time frame we gave you, then we're at least responding sooner than later. And I know I myself have personally done this. I'll let you know, hey, I have to talk to Christy, or, she's not available until, or I don't meet with her until XYZ date. And that way, sometimes you guys will respond and say, yeah, that's fine. Or, we'll have a different conversation and then we'll kind of just go from there. And lastly, all of this kind of ties into number 4. We want to be able to give you the right answer. And that's why these things can sometimes take time. Just like I said, especially when it involves other people and their availability doesn't align with mine or even yours. So I wanted to be sure that we shared that, because we want to make sure we get you the right answer. And I think it's safe to say that everybody here, staff and attendees, nobody wants to rush an answer just for the sake of answering it and providing you with something, because that's where we tend to make a lot of mistakes. And that's really where you tend to get misinformation. And that's one of the things that we're trying to avoid, and one of the concerns that was brought to our attention recently. So in an effort to decrease that confusion and the sharing of misinformation, we want to make sure that we're including the people we're including and providing the right answer. And again, that all depends on availability, but like I said, they all kind of tie in together, so we'll be sure to share that with you. And also, if we don't know the answer, we want to be able to say that too. And I've done this myself in email, say, hey, you know what, I'm really not sure, but let me talk to so-and-so. And I may not give you a time frame in that email, but once I get in touch with so-and-so, or I find out, oh, that person's not available right now, I might email back and say, or I will email back and say, hey, you know what, she's not available today. I already sent her an email. I'm hoping to hear from her tomorrow. I'll follow back up. So the ultimate point is to continue to share, I guess, what's going on, so you're not left hanging. And just remember that we want to take a little time to make sure we get you the right answer instead of being wrong, because nobody likes that. Hold on. Sorry, y'all, I'm reading my notes. Oh, one last thing, and it's not on here, and I can't believe I forgot to add it, but we want to be mindful of time here too. So it's going to be hard for us to provide a response if we get an email or request with a short time frame. For example, I sometimes will get an email saying, hey, we want to do X, Y, Z, and I need an answer by 2 o'clock, because that's when we're meeting with our NC Pre-K committee. And that can sometimes be almost impossible, and it depends really on the topic. Some things are pretty quick and dirty. We're like, oh, okay, well, we can answer that because it's right here in the manual, or we've already shared information pertaining to that, so we'll just reiterate that. But if it's something that's a little more intensive and it requires other people, just like I mentioned before, other staff, especially if it's super important and it requires maybe upper level management permission from Chrissy or Ariel, that we may not be able to meet your time frame. And I'm sharing that to say, if you know that it's super sensitive or requires a quick turnaround, and I know things happen last minute everywhere, but if we can get as much heads up as possible, we'll be able to help you better. We'll still always try to do the best we can, but I just kind of wanted to share that because I don't want anybody to feel that we're not meeting your request just because. There's usually always a reason things don't happen quickly, but I'm just trying to be even more transparent here. So that takes care of our part. And as I was writing this or creating these slides, I thought, well, what better way to kind of continue with communication, if we don't share your part, because like I said earlier, communication is two ways, right? So we have two groups working here, two large groups. And I wanted to share a little bit of your part. And this is none of this, our part or your part, is written in stone. These are just ideas that we think will help our communication across the board. So what we're asking of you is to continue to read your emails and any material that we share with you thoroughly. A lot of times we get questions that the answers are really right in your email. They may be in the actual body of the email or the attachment. Sometimes we'll redirect staff. Sometimes we'll provide the response. I guess rewritten is the word I'm looking for here. But we want to make sure that you're reading the information. It's also helpful to you because if we're not available or we're not responding quick enough or you're not getting the answer you need right away or you need a quick answer, a lot of times it can be in that material. So we just want to make sure you're taking the time to do that. We created, well, not created, it's been around for a while, but we cleaned up our responsibility chart. And that responsibility chart is online, and I believe it was sent in a PDF form to everybody a few months back, and we'll resend it again with the presentation after our regional meeting. So we want to make sure that you're also referencing the responsibility chart. This kind of goes back to what I was sharing in the earlier slides. That responsibility chart is going to let you know who exactly to contact for the topic you need assistance with. And it'll, that way you know it's going to the right person and it's not getting shuffled around or sent to so-and-so. So you want to reference that. You know, we'll update it as changes are made to our staff because, like I said, we have turnover too. We have some vacancies on that chart that we hope to fill soon. And once we do that, we'll send an updated chart. But it will not only send an updated chart, we'll update it online as well. But that's something you want to really keep at hand with your program guidance and requirements manual. We also want to ensure that the information that we're sharing with you is shared locally with your site administrators, your NC Pre-K teachers, you know, NC Pre-K center staff, basically. And it's not to say that that's not happening. Some of you do a really great job of that, but I'd be remiss if I don't mention that we also hear that that's not happening in some areas. What COVID has really done, and you know, it could be a good or not so good thing depending on who you are, but we've heard more from teachers this year than we have in any other year. And I'm talking about hearing from them regarding topics that are unrelated to their licensure regarding NC Pre-K, their teacher license. So they're sharing information now where they're saying, hey, you know, I heard about XYZ, but we didn't get that information. And they know that the information's out there because maybe their friend in the neighboring county got that information. And so we just want to reiterate that what we share with you, especially when we put, I think you've noticed this year that at the top of every email in red, I'll put when you have to share it with your NC Pre-K site administrators and teachers or so on and so forth, because we want to make sure that that information specifically gets to them. Not everything has to go to them, but there's certain things that we know that they need. So we just want to make sure that you're doing your part. We share it with you, you share it with them. And if there's a breakdown somewhere in your county, if you need our guidance and support in terms of maybe clarifying some things, or maybe you're having difficulty with a specific center for whatever reasons, you know, maybe you are sending it to the site administrator, but for whatever reason she's not sharing it with the teachers, you know, that's still a concern for us because we want our teachers to be informed. So if there's any way that we can provide support or help, you just have to let your NC Pre-K program policy consultant know, and we'll try to support you with those concerns the best way that we can. So basically, just remember, share, share, share. Number 4, this kind of ties into everything that I said on the previous slide when I was talking about our part. Just please be patient. We know that can be hard, and this is coming from somebody who is probably not the most patient person in the world. And those of you who are middle children know what I'm talking about. So I myself have to practice patience a lot. And I know that can be difficult for some of us. So I'm just asking you, especially when certain requests or guidance that you seek out from us requires a little bit more patience, just please work with us. We do make you guys a priority, believe it or not. I know you don't see what goes on day to day, but, you know, when I get certain emails, I'll make a note of it, and that way I'll know, okay, I need to have a discussion with Janessa about this county, or so-and-so emailed me. I need to talk about I need to talk with Christy about XYZ. Like, we make not only mental notes, but you're part of our, well, I'm a list person, so you're part of my list. I know a few of us on our team use lists as well and sticky notes and all that fun stuff. So you are a priority. And also keep in mind that you're 91 contractors, and, you know, there's sometimes, especially when it falls on one person, there's only one of us. If we're getting several emails, especially about the same thing, it may take a little while to get back, but we really do our best. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate that and share that with y'all. And lastly, copying. So I just wanted to add that you want to make sure that you're copying people on your emails that are required to be on your email. This will help decrease confusion and increase our response time. And I don't know, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking of the bystander effect. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but and I know it sounds weird to talk about the bystander effect with email, but believe me, it connects. And for those of you that don't know what the bystander effect is, it's when, you know, you have a group of people that are witnessing something going on and maybe something bad, but the assumption is that somebody else in that group that's witnessing that is going to take care of it, so you don't bother. And so when it relates to email, I don't know if you know this or not, but I actually read this somewhere, that it takes 5 times as long for somebody to respond to email when several people are copied on it, especially a whole group of people, even people that probably have nothing to do with that topic or that area or what have you. The assumption is, and I'm not saying that this is right, and please, I am not justifying this behavior, I'm just sharing information, but the belief is, or the thought is, that somebody on that email is going to respond. Somebody else is going to take care of it. And then what happens is, and especially if you fall further down that line of people included, somebody always thinks, oh, somebody in the top line will respond to that, or whoever they put first will respond to that. And that's not always the case. Sometimes the people that are added first are considered to be the most important, I guess, hierarchical, okay? Meaning you might put Ariel or Christy first because they're our director and deputy director, but ultimately they're not responsible for responding to that email. But in somebody else's eyes, they may think, oh, well, they emailed Ariel and Christy. They'll take care of it because they're important, right? They're going to do it. But that's not always the case. And what usually happens is Ariel and Christy will come to us and say, did y'all respond to so-and-so? But when you have 20 plus people on that email, it's gonna get a little lost, guys. I'm not gonna lie to you, and this just kind of goes back to me being transparent. Now, that's not. I don't want you guys to think like that's what happens with all of them, because sometimes what does happen is enough of us read it to say, hey, did you read that email? I think we need to talk to XYZ person. Or did so-and-so say anything? Did anybody respond to this yet? Because if not, we need to get together and decide what the answer is so we then designate who's going to respond to this email. Now, it makes it a lot easier when just the people that should be included are included. It's easier to add people than it is to remove, because sometimes what happens is somebody will respond just to respond, and they may not share the information that we were going to share, and that's going to cause confusion. So say you only added, let's reverse this, and say you only added the 3 people who you think should be included or who you think you should ask this question to. It's easier for those 3 people to say, hey, you know what? I think we need to include A and B on this. And then we can rope them in and still get you the answer you need. And then one of those 3, or maybe even the person we roped in, will respond and then CC everybody else so everybody knows, hey, I responded and everybody else knows, and hopefully it's settled. And if not, we go back and forth, but at least it includes the people that it should include. So I hope that it's hard to have these meetings virtually, guys, because I'm used to seeing your faces. So I don't know how this information is being received. And doing virtual meetings is almost like email. You kind of accept it or read it in the tone that you have in your head. So I hope that it's coming across the way that we mean this to come across. And I hope that it is helpful. And I hope that it will help us continue to communicate. And I say continue because I think we do a decent job across the board. Some better than others, maybe. Some groups better than others. When you're working with this many people, both on our side and yours, that's a lot of different characters or attitudes or people just in general to deal with. So we're hoping that, I know this isn't a one-size-fits-all, but it's hopefully a one-size-fits-most, and we can make it work for everybody. So I think that's the end for me. I think it's lunchtime, Janessa, or are we doing Q&A? I need somebody to...
No. So we're going to break until about 1:50 is when we'll ask people to start logging back on, and then we'll pick up with presentation at 2 and then move into Q&A.
Okay, thanks, Janessa. So with that being said, we're going to take our break just like Janessa said. Please log in enough time. She mentioned 1:50. Our presentation with teaching strategy starts at hopefully 2 o'clock promptly. Hopefully we don't have any issues with them. And until this afternoon, y'all enjoy your lunch. Thank you. Tammy, can you put us in practice, please?
Lorraine and Janessa, I want to know, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Sonny, yeah.
Awesome. They finally fixed it. Thank you. Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.